It was after breakfast. I brought the fruit and the flowers over and laid it at his feet. There was a guardrail in front of him to prevent fanatics from attacking him with love. And then I sat down in front of him. He looked at me and smiled, and I smiled back. I have been to many teachers, many saints, many sages. I was with Nisargadatta, Anandamayi Ma, Papa Ramdas, Neem Karoli Baba, and many others. But never did I meet anyone who exuded such compassion, such love, such bliss as Ramana Maharshi. There were about 30 people in the room. He looked at me and asked me if I had eaten breakfast. I said no. He spoke some Tamil to the attendant, and the attendant came back with 2 giant leaves, one with fruit, and one with some porridge with pepper. After I consumed the food, I just lied down on the floor. I was very tired. It was time for his usual walk. He had arthritis in the legs and could hardly walk at that time. His attendants helped him to get up, and he walked out the door. When he was outside, he said something to his attendants, and his attendants motioned for me to come. He guided me to a little shack that I was going to use while on my stay there. He came inside with me, and I bet you think we spoke about profound subjects. On the contrary, he was a natural man. He was the self of the universe. He asked me how my trip was and where I was from, what made me come here. Then he said I should rest, so I laid down on the cot and he left. I was awakened about 5 o'clock. It was Ramana again. He came by himself and he brought me food. Can you imagine that? We spoke briefly. I ate and I slept. The next morning I went into the hall. After the morning chanting, there was breakfast. Then everybody sat around just watching Ramana, and he'd go through his routine. He would go through the mail and read it out loud, talk to some of his devotees, and I just observed everything. His composure never changed. Never did I see such compassion, such love. Then people started to come over to him, asking him questions. His replies were very succinct. They weren't like you read in a book. Apparently, what you read in a book is his reply to 3 or 4 people. They condensed it all into one question and one answer. But people usually ask a question or make a statement. If he agreed, he would nod or say, yes, that's it. If he didn't, he would offer an explanation in maybe 1 or 2 sentences. There were foreigners at the ashram when I was there, Muslims, Catholic priests, people from all races and all nationalities. The devotees would sit around and say nothing, but the seekers and the disciples would ask questions. When I was there a week or so, 2 of his disciples were sort of jokingly arguing with him about something in Tamil. I asked the interpreter what they were talking about. He said Ramana's couch is covered with lice, and he refuses to let us kill them. They climb over his body and his legs, and he doesn't care. He even feeds them. We want to exterminate the couch, but he won't let us. So the next day they tricked him. When he went outside for his morning walk, they sprayed his couch with DDT. When he came back, he smelled the couch, and he smiled and he jokingly said, "Someone has tricked me." He never got angry, never got mad. I don't think he knew what the words meant. couple of weeks later, there was a German lady who had come to the ashram, and apparently she had made a donation of some kind, but she wasn't happy for some reason. She was complaining to Ramana, and he just kept silent. I again asked the interpreter, "What does she want?" The interpreter said, "She wants her donation back. She wants to go home, back to Germany." So she started to argue. Everything was going on in front of Ramana. She started to argue with one of the managers of the ashram, and Ramana just looked. Then Ramana said in English, "Give her back her donation and add 50 rupees to it," which they did, and she left. This was his nature. He never saw anything wrong. He never took anyone out of his love, no matter what they did, who they were, where their ego was. He understood and loved everyone just the same. We're also celebrating the birth of Jesus this month. He was never born this month, but we're celebrating it anyway. Ramana used to quote from the scriptures. Jesus and Ramana said basically the same things. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." Ramana said, "The self is within you. Search for it and find it and awaken." Jesus said, "Son, I am with you always, and all that I have is yours." Ramana said, "I can never leave you. I am always with you." His compassion never left him. 6 months prior to his leaving his body, I went to Bangalore to see Papa Ram Das. I was informed that he left his body. I went back to Tiruvannamalai, but the crowds had already started to come, thousands of people. So I climbed the hill and went into one of the caves, stayed there for 5 days. When I came down, the crowds were dispersed. He had already been interned. I inquired of his devotees who saw him last, what were his last words that he spoke? The devotee said, "While he was leaving his body, a peacock flew on top of the hall and started screeching. And Ramana remarked to his devotee, 'Has anyone fed the peacock yet?' And those were the last words he spoke. Now, let's talk about you. Think of the problems you believe you have. Think of the nonsense that you go on with every day. Think how furious you become, how you always want to stick up for your rights, as if you had any. The problem is, you think. If you would only stop thinking. You say, "How can I function if I stop thinking?" Very well, thank you. As a matter of fact, you would function much better than you do now, for you will always be taken care of. The universe loves you. It will always supply you with your needs. Forget about other people, what they do and what they don't do. Do not listen to malicious gossip. Be yourself. Understand who you really are. You are the absolute reality, unconditioned consciousness. Work from that standpoint. Do not work from your problems. Do not get lost in meaningless gossip. Understand your true reality. Be yourself. What Ramana taught was not new. Ramana simply taught the Upanishads. Who am I? Has been around since time immemorial. If If a teacher always tells you they have something new to teach you, be careful, because there's nothing new under the sun. Ramana simply revised the Who Am I philosophy and made it simple for people in the 20th century. But what did he teach? He simply taught that you are not the body-mind. He simply taught that if you have a problem, do not feel sorry for yourself. Do not go to psychiatrists. Do not condemn yourself. Simply ask yourself, to whom does this problem come? And of course, the answer will be, the problem comes to me. Hold on to the me. Follow the me to the source, the substratum of all existence. How do you do that? How do you hold on to me? How do you hold on to I? By simply asking yourself, who am I? What am I? The same thing, what am I? Asking yourself again and again, who am I? Forget about time. Forget about space. Forget everything. Keep yourself from thinking. When the thoughts come, ask yourself, to whom comes the thoughts? Again, they come to me. Hold on to the me. I think these thoughts. Well then, who am I? Who thinks these thoughts? Who am I? An easier way to do this, I have found, is to simply say to yourself, I. And you will notice as you do this that the I goes deeper, deeper, deeper within you, into your heart center, right to the source. For Westerners, I have found that saying I seems to be more helpful than who am I. Again, do not look at time. Do not ask yourself, when is something going to happen? A devotee went to Ramana and said, I've been with you for 25 years doing who am I, and nothing has happened yet. So Ramana said, try it another 25 and see what happens. Forget about time. Forget about when something is going to happen. Even if nothing happens in this life, you're ahead of the game. For if you've been sincere, and if you've really been working on yourself, you will come back to an environment that is conducive for your realization. And at that time, you may have realization when you're about 12 or 13 years old, because you've earned it. But if you're like most people and go around minding everybody's business and saying, I have no time to do this, I've tried it for 2 hours and it doesn't work, then you keep coming back again and again and again, going through all kinds of experiences, until one day, maybe 10,000 years from now, you may actually get it and start working on yourself diligently, what you should be doing now. What do you do with yourself all day long? Think. From the moment you get out of bed, how does your day go? Do you think of God at all? Do you practice, or do you think about your affairs and your body? Be honest with yourself. If you're not making any headway in spiritual life, it's because you're not putting anything into it. You have to realize that whatever you see in the world is only a reflection of yourself. If people are mean to you, if they abuse you, it is because you're seeing yourself as those people. In other words, you've got those qualities. Going back to the story of Ramana and the German lady, when he gave her back her donation plus some more rupees. The following afternoon, a devotee asked him, "Ramana, why did you do that?" And Ramana explained, "When she gave us a donation, to whom do you think she gave it to? She gave it to herself, for there's only one self. When she took it back, she took it away from herself. When she goes back to Germany, I'm sure she'll have financial problems until she learns that anything you give is only giving to yourself, for there's not 2 or 3 or 4 selves. There's only one self. And this includes everything you do in your life, the way you look at another person. You're simply seeing yourself. And this is why the only thing I can do for you is to love you, because I love myself and you are myself. When I say I love myself, I am not referring to Robert. When I use the word self, I'm referring to infinity, to omnipresence. It includes everything in this universe. So when I love myself, I am obviously loving everyone and everything that exists. I also realize that everything that exists is a projection of my own mind. So I do not identify with the images. I identify with the source, with consciousness, with absolute reality, with ultimate oneness, with nirvana, with emptiness. While I'm talking to you, I realize I'm talking to myself, because again, there is only one self. If you can only remember that in your dealings with others, whichever way you deal with anyone else, you're doing it to yourself. Can you see now why a person like Ramana could never hate anyone or be angry? It wasn't in his nature. How do you react to life? When a person displeases you, what do? Curse him or her? Become angry? Become violent? How do you handle it? How do you react? Be honest with yourself. It's the only way. Start from where you are. No human being is perfect. We all make mistakes. Do not feel sorry for yourself, but start from where you are. Where are you? You are a consciousness. This is your true nature. Learn to love everything. Learn to see only the good. Realize there's a reason for everything. If a person displeases you, simply look the other way and forget it. Learn to stop your mind from thinking. And you do this by immediately catching yourself when you react to a condition and inquiring within yourself, who is becoming angry? Who feels out of sorts? I do. I. Realize you're dealing with the personal I and all the anger, all the frustration, all the karma, all the samskaras are all attached to that personal I. Consequently, When you get rid of the personal I, everything else will go with it. So don't try to solve your problems. Do not try to become a better person. Do not try to run away from your life. Simply see who it is who is running, who it is who needs to be a better person, who has all these problems. I, always I. Hold on to that I with all of your might, but do not concentrate on the I. You concentrate on the source, which is consciousness, God. And everybody asks me over and over again, and I keep telling you, they ask me, how do I hold on to the I? By asking, who am I? Or just saying, I. Automatically, you will notice the I going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper within your heart. And one day you will become free. But you're already free. Why not wake up right now? Why go through anything? If this appears too difficult for you, if inquiry appears hard, then your next best bet is to surrender completely to God. Surrender everything, your problems, your ego, your body, your mind, your work, your world. Say, here God, take it. I want no more of this. I am yours. Do with me as you will. Thy will be done. This means you no longer have anything to worry about. If you truly surrender, you will immediately become radiantly happy, for you have given your ego to God, and what's left is God. You have no body. You have no mind. You have no work. You have no problems. It has been your ego all the time fooling you, making you believe that something is wrong, and you've been playing hide and seek, trying to find God here, there, and everywhere, when all the time God was within yourself as yourself. Begin to see the truth. Begin to stand up tall. Become fearless. Become strong. Leave the world alone. It will take care of itself. There is a mysterious power that guides the world to its right destiny. It doesn't need any help from you. If you're meant to do certain work in the world, it will be done, but you have nothing to do with that. It doesn't mean that you have to leave your job or go sit in a cave or give up your life. Wherever you are right now is where you're supposed to be. Just feel, I am not the doer, and your work will go on. Do not be attached to your work. Do not react to any situation or any condition. Be yourself. Focus your attention on consciousness, and your body will go on doing whatever it came here to do. Everything is preordained. Even when I raise my finger like this, it is preordained. Do not be egotistical to believe that you have any power over everybody or anybody, or that you are the doer. It's a privilege to have been born on this earth. And the reason you have been born is to find your real self. Go for it. Do it. Become free. I don't know why I talk so much. It doesn't do you any good. I always want to sit in the silence. But sometimes we have some new people, and they do not understand the silence yet, so I keep on chatting. I wonder if I know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter anyway. From the Ramana Pariya Puranam by Viganisa. The year was 1992, and I was traveling from San Diego to Phoenix via Los Angeles. At the crowded transit airport in Los Angeles, an elderly American lady approached me and asked, "Are you from India?" When I said yes, she very affectionately added, "This evening, a very pious man is giving a talk on Hindu spirituality in a friend's house. I am going, and I would like to take you there." I asked, "What is the name of this pious person?" And she answered, "Robert Adams." I said, "This evening I am giving a talk at Phoenix, so I cannot come. Please accept my apologies." She was disappointed, but not being one who would easily give up, she said, "I am sorry that you will not be able to come. Will you permit me to give you the transcripts of some of his talks? Could you go through them?" She handed over the bunch of printouts, which I started reading on my flight to Phoenix. The very first page caught my rapt attention. Glued to the transcripts, I completed reading them in a state of ecstasy. I was the editor of the Mountain Path. The editorial team at that time was keenly interested in focusing on those blessed devotees who had realized the self in Sri Bhagavan's presence. We were planning to devote all the issues of 1993 and 94 to them. The entire team had worked hard to this end, and we had collected quite a few articles on the subject, albeit with stiff opposition from certain quarters. I felt that young and new seekers who pursued self-inquiry would be highly motivated if they read such accounts, as most people feel that the path of wisdom, the Jnana Marga, is very difficult and suited only for a chosen few. Whereas the truth is that it is a simple, direct, and natural path meant for all. Finding the address of Robert Adams in the transcript, I wrote to him requesting the details of how he attained self-realization in the presence of Bhagavan. I received a long letter. "I am Robert Adams. I was born in New York in 1928. As far back as I can remember, even when I was in the crib, I recollect that a man about 2 feet tall, with white hair and a gray beard, would always appear at the foot of the crib and speak gibberish to me. Being a child, I could not understand anything that he said. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I told my parents about it, but they thought I was playing games. I told my friends. They also laughed at me. I stopped talking about it. These visits by the small man stopped when I was around 7. Robert Adams also added that he did not know what to do. He could not share what happened with anyone. Then something strange took place. Whenever he wanted anything, whether it was a pencil, a chocolate, or a violin, it would appear through someone when he uttered the word God 3 times. If he found that someone needed a pencil in class, he would utter God 3 times, and the pencil would be there, and he would hand over the pencil to the person who needed it. It happened during his exams too. He was not interested in studying. During his exams, he would utter God 3 times, and the answer would appear before him, and he would write them down. This is how he passed the exams. When writing a mathematics paper for which he was not prepared, he did the same thing. He held before him the question paper and uttered God 3 times. He expected the answer to appear as always, but what happened was something entirely different. The whole room was filled with a light 1,000 times more brilliant than the sun, he said. It was a beautiful, warm, and shining glow. Everything and everyone in the room was immersed in the light. All the children seemed to be mere particles of light, and I found myself melting into a radiant being of consciousness. I then merged into consciousness. It was not an out-of-body experience. This was a completely different experience. I realized that I was not my body. What appeared to be my body was not real. I went beyond the light into pure radiant consciousness. I became consciousness, and my individuality merged into pure and absolute bliss. I expanded and became the universe. The feeling was indescribable. It was total bliss and total joy. After this experience, Robert Adams could no longer carry on his activities as usual. Being a teenager, he wanted someone to guide him. At that time, Joel Goldsmith was regarded as a true Christian mystic. Many people suggested that he approach Joel Goldsmith, and therefore he went there. Years later, Joel Goldsmith kept constant contact with Arthur Osborne and me. He contributed some original and brilliant articles to almost every issue of the Mountain Path. Joel Goldsmith listened to Robert Adams and suggested, "Go to Paramahansa Yogananda in Encinitas. He will guide you." Robert Adams went to Encinitas in a state of excitement and ecstasy. A strange thing happened. There were many people in the presence of Paramahansa Yogananda. Robert, however, was standing outside. Paramahansa told his secretary, "There is a boy outside, call him in." Robert Adams prostrated before the great man and said, "You are my guru." Paramahansa answered, "No, I am not your guru. Your guru is Sri Ramana Maharshi. The Maharshi is not well. Go to him immediately." After coming out, Robert felt the need to read a book in the library. He was browsing through the philosophy section when the book Who Am I caught his attention. When he saw the picture of Ramana Maharshi on the book, his hair stood on end, because this was the very person who used to appear before his crib and speak to him. So with the strong recommendation of Paramahansa Yogananda, he reached Arunachala sometime in late 1946 or early 47. Here's an account of what happened in the presence of Ramana Maharshi. As told earlier, he arrived at Arunachala at 18. He took flowers and fruit. The Maharshi exuded compassion, asked that a meal be brought to him. The next morning, Robert went to the old hall to meet Bhagavan. What happened in the presence of the Maharshi guided him deep within, while the silence and quietude of Bhagavan engulfed him. When he entered the hall, he saw Bhagavan's attendant, Krishna Swami, approaching Bhagavan again and again to complain about some people. After some time, Bhagavan looked sternly at Krishna Swami and said, "Remember the purpose for which you have come here. Attend to it. Keep quiet." Robert took this as his very first upadesa, his initiation or instruction, from Bhagavan to himself rather than to Krishna Swami. From then on, every moment of the 3 years he stayed there was precious. He dived within and remained in a state of silence. He neither interfered in anyone's personal affairs, nor in the ashram management. Inwardly, he was established in truth, and outwardly, he was a recluse. There was no need for him to talk to anyone, not even to Bhagavan. This is why nobody knew Robert Adams, even though he stayed for 3 years in Arunachala. Later, when I went to verify, 1 or 2 old devotees said that there was a young fellow who was possibly mad. His name was perhaps Robert Adams. They also said that he always kept to himself and did not have anything to do with the others. He never spoke for all the time he was doing sadhana. Robert told me that when Bhagavan dropped his body, it did not affect him because he saw Bhagavan only as the self. Even when Bhagavan was present physically, he experienced Bhagavan only as the self. So he felt no sorrow or loss now as he plunged deeper and deeper into the self. Once, Bhagavan appeared in Robert Adams' dream and said, "Go to Benares. There is an old Swami. Stay with him." The Swami was 90 years old. Robert went to Benares and sat in his presence every day. No conversation was necessary. One day, the Swami informed people who had gathered before him, "I know my end is approaching in 3 days. I have not completed my mission. The moment I drop my body, a youth on the road will also die for no reason whatsoever. I will reside in his body and continue my mission." On the 3rd day, just after the Swami dropped his body, a young boy around 14 or 15 years of age was crossing the road. He suddenly had fits and collapsed. After around 20 minutes, the still body rose and disappeared into the forest. This gave further meaning to Robert's belief in the self. The appearance or the disappearance of the body did not in any way concern him. Robert wandered around India, meeting with sages and saints. He did this for a few years. Then Bhagavan appeared once again in his dream and said, "Go back to your country and spread the teaching of self-inquiry, how to attain self-realization, and how to stay in the state of I am to seekers in America." Bhagavan very specifically stated, "Do not start an institution. Do not be a guru. No publicity. If more than 15 people gather around you, go away from that town and continue to spread the teaching elsewhere." Robert Adams traveled, but there were no articles about him and no publicity. Not except a select few knew about him. On reaching Hollywood, he was afflicted by Parkinson's disease and was forced to remain there. A beautiful woman named Mary, along with her friends, attended on him. They also helped him disseminate the teachings of Bhagavan's self-inquiry. He conducted satsangs and had small gatherings. His presence was very powerful. He would sit in the hall in silence for 20 minutes, and everyone around him would become absolutely silent. It did not matter how many people were gathered there or who was there. Ultimately, after the period of silence, Robert would speak for a few minutes. When I wrote to Robert Adams asking for permission to meet him, he replied, "You can meet me in Los Angeles." At the time, the president of the Course of Miracles, Dr. Tara Singh, was at Ramana Ashramam, and he invited my friend and me to stay in their headquarters in Los Angeles. "I will arrange for you to meet Robert Adams," he said. He arranged a meeting with Robert in a restaurant. We met there because the master had no institution, not even a house to call his own. I was thrilled because he had called us for a lunch meeting. It reminded me of Bhagavan, who not only imparted wisdom but saw to it that anyone visiting the ashram partook of its food. As we approached the table, we could only see Robert's back, but that was more than enough. The spiritual aura, the peace, the friendliness, and the vibrations were palpable, even from a distance. Robert had a great sense of humor. I requested him again and again to tell us about Bhagavan, for I wanted to hear it from his own lips. He recounted all the incidents that he had earlier written to me, of how he saw Bhagavan at the foot of his crib and the other incidents, and concluded by saying, "In the evening we are having a satsang in Mary's house. Please do come." "70 people had already gathered when I reached there. There was such a profound and serene silence. A special seat had been arranged for Robert since he had Parkinson's. Behind him was a picture of Bhagavan. I too was given a special chair. After Robert sat down, he looked at everyone for about 20 minutes, and in those 20 minutes, he silenced everyone's minds and put them in a complete state of inwardness. Afterwards, he took the mic and spoke. He announced, "I welcome my master, Ramana Maharshi's grandnephew, Ganesan, and his secretary. I would like Ganesan to speak." I spoke for nearly half an hour, at the end of which he happily said, "I entirely agree with every word that Ganesan has spoken today." I would like to share an incident of great significance that took place when I was there. After the speeches, I sat at Robert's feet. Another person was also there, a John Wilkins, I think, who had been Robert's friend for more than 20 years. Out of the blue, John suddenly asked, "Robert, I want you to tell me, what is the truth and what is untruth? What is reality and unreality?" I do not want you to quote from the scriptures or use any philosophical jargon. You must make me experience these right now at your feet. I was thrilled because I wanted to know how Robert was going to answer these difficult questions. Robert looked happy for some time and then became very serious. He looked at John and asked, "Who are you?" John thought that Robert had forgotten him because of the disease he had. He replied, "I am John Wilkins." Robert gave him the most gracious smile that I have ever seen and said, "I am is the truth, and John Wilkins is the untruth. I am is the reality, and John Wilkins is the unreality." Everyone went into a state of inner stillness. This was not a mere answer. It was a statement that transported everyone into a state of deep silence of the mind. Robert Adams invited me to come again the next year, but said that he might shift to Sedona since Bhagavan had selected the place. He invited me over saying that everything had been arranged. Accommodation was given to me and my friend in a couple's house. I attended his satsangs and he always made me speak. He used to listen to my sharings with great appreciation. One day, my friend felt so grateful that she held Robert's hands and said, "I want to do something for you. Please tell me what service I can render." He replied, "Yes, you can give me Ramana Ashramam food. I am very fond of the food there, and I will eat it with joy if you make it for me." She happily agreed. There were not enough vessels to make South Indian food, so we had to look for these vessels. When someone lent us a vessel, they also said, "We too will come for lunch." Robert had said that only 6 people were invited. Then, every 2 hours, Robert would send word that 6 more people would be coming for lunch. It ultimately added up to 60 people. My friend and a few others started preparing the food from very early in the morning, since Ramana Ashramam food meant sambar, rasam, vegetables, yogurt, papad, and payasam. Some people told us that it was enough if Robert served the lunch. The others could take the food as prasad. However, my friend was firm that everyone be fed because she remembered that Bhagavan, in his lifetime, wanted himself to be served last so that everyone else could be fed. The next day, a sumptuous and delicious lunch was served. My friend served Robert. Others helped themselves. He had 3 or 4 helpings of each dish and was delighted. We were all very happy that Robert ate the food with so much relish. After lunch, my friend, in all her innocence, asked Robert, "Robert, was it like the ashram food or was it something missing?" Robert answered, "Yes, it was perfectly delicious. Only one thing was missing, the banana leaf on which the food is served there." Everyone wanted a satsang after lunch. Robert said, "I am not going to talk today. Only Ganesan will talk, and he should talk on the topic chosen by me. Your topic, Ganesan, is Bhagavan and the monkeys." I must have spoken for about 20 minutes. Everyone laughed a lot and enjoyed the talk. Then someone from the audience told my friend, "We have heard about Bhagavan from Ganesan. We would like to hear about Ganesan from you." Robert intervened and said, "I will give you a topic. Talk about Bhagavan and Ganesan." And my friend gave an account of my childhood, my relationship with Bhagavan, how Bhagavan taught me to serve salt, and a few other incidents. She said Bhagavan was known for his Thanga Kai, or golden hand. Whatever Bhagavan touched thrived and prospered. In Ramana Nagar, Ganesan is called the funeral hand because he lights the funeral pyre of those old devotees who die in Ramana Nagar and in Ramana Ashramam. There was a burst of laughter from the audience when they heard this. Robert pretended to become very serious and said, "All those who are afraid of death run away from here because the funeral hands are here." I was at his feet at the time. He bent towards me and said, Ganesan, extend your hands. I am ready. At that time, we all thought that he was just joking. When it was time for Robert to leave, Sharmila, who was a good singer and a great devotee, began to sing. Everyone joined in the singing. Robert got up and danced to the tune, "Hit the road, Jack. Don't come back no more, no more, no more." He was always dressed informally, and he was wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and a cap turned backwards. He was a simple man, natural, humorous, and constantly joking. Most of the jokes were at his own expense. We enjoyed ourselves thoroughly. I want to share an important feature that repeatedly took place in the presence of Robert Adams. The moment I met him, whether it was at Hollywood or at Sedona, he would extend his hand. I always carried in my pocket 2 small packets of vibhuti and kumkum, taken from Sri Bhagavan's shrine as his prasad. Even now I do so. When I first met Robert Adams at Hollywood, he asked me why I was wearing the religious marks of vibhuti and kumkum on my forehead. I told him that Vishwanatha Swami once told a dear friend and fellow devotee, "You have a very broad forehead. It would look appropriate if you adorn it with vibhuti and kumkum." After some time, when this devotee met Vishwanatha Swami at the ashram, he noticed that this devotee was not wearing the vibhuti and kumkum. Vishwanatha Swami did not say anything to him. Instead, he turned to me immediately and in my friend's presence itself commanded me, "Start wearing them on your forehead for my sake." I was never a ritualist, and Swami knew that very well. Yet, since such a powerful command had come from him, from that day onwards, I started wearing them. Not only as prasad from Sri Bhagavan, but also as a blessing from Vishwanatha Swami. Robert Adams said, "Whenever you meet me, please put Sri Bhagavan's prasad on my forehead too." I did it and received the added blessings of Robert Adams. Soon we were back in India and stayed at the Krishnamurti Foundation at Rajghat and Benares. One day I was told that there was an international call for me. It was Robert Adams. He addressed me by my name, but he could continue no further. His assistant Richard spoke to me. He said, "Robert invites you to come to Sedona and spend 3 months in the spring with him. He is very insistent. He would like your friend also to come with you, since he understands that you cannot travel alone. He will make all the arrangements. Sharmila will pick you up. The other devotees will take care of your needs. Please come for the spring." Back at the ashram, there was a letter for me in Robert's own handwriting. "Ganesan, please come and spend the whole of spring with me." I was very moved by the invitation. My friend and I landed in San Francisco, exactly at the time that Robert dropped his body in Sedona. Was it one of his practical jokes? I recall the time when he said, "Take me in your funeral hands." It was literally true now. There was something that Robert definitely wanted to convey to me. My friend and I continued our journey to Sedona, where we met Sharmila, a wonderful and beautiful lady. She did not have a house of her own. We stayed with her in 3 or 4 different places as she was house-sitting. The old devotees of Robert wanted me to participate in their satsangs. I talked about self-inquiry and how by practicing this we can attain that state of quietude and silence. The silence that Bhagavan had given Robert, and the silence that Robert had given to all the devotees. This was to be carried on. This is why Robert had asked me to come for 3 months. I too learned a lesson from Robert. I understood that one has to look on all the happenings outside of oneself to be a mere dream. This was the knowledge that Robert directly and indirectly imparted to me. Even during his last days, Robert retained his sense of humor. When he was bedridden, a young man named John attended on him. John knew that he was serving a realized soul. Robert's wife was not happy with the situation of John serving her husband. She was constantly sending him away. But John had to attend on Robert since Robert was bedridden. One day, Robert wanted hot water, and John had to go into the kitchen to get it. Robert's wife was frying something in a big pan at the time. She became so angry that she was ready to hurl the pan at John. John became so alarmed that he shouted for help. "Robert, Robert, she is trying to hit me with a big pan. What should I do? Please help me." Robert, who was lying down, said, "Duck." It was typical of Robert, ever half serious and half humorous. By way of paying homage to Robert, I quote a few passages from Robert's teachings. He says, "The highest teaching in the world is silence. There is nothing higher than this. A devotee who sits in the company of the sage purifies his mind just by being with him. The mind automatically becomes quieter. No words are necessary. Silence is the ultimate reality, and everything in this world exists through silence. This means, literally, going deep inside yourself to the dwelling where nothing is happening. This place transcends time and space. This is a brand new dimension of nothingness. That is our real home and the place to which we actually belong. In this state, there is only deep silence. There is no good, no bad, and no state of trying to achieve anything. It is a state of pure being. The ultimate freedom is to reach this state of deep silence in which you transcend your body, your affairs, and the universe. The other lesson to be learned is that you are real. What you appear to be is false. Identify yourself with the real you and not the false you. Do not accept everything that you see as reality. The only freedom that you have is to turn within. One day you will awaken from this dream, for this is also a dream, and you will be free, liberated. There is no such thing as birth or death. Nobody is born, nobody dies, and nobody prevails in between. Nothing that appears exists. Only the self exists. All this is the self, and I am that. You are the absolute reality. You are consciousness, emptiness, and Satchit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. That is your true nature. Why not abide in it and be free? Empty your mind and become still. Everything will happen of its own accord. There is really nothing that you have to do. Just be still. Be still and know that I am God. I am is the self. Accept that and be free. Salutations to Robert Adams, the great blissful, surrendered devotee of Bhagavan.